I hate when my husband works late. Being at home, alone at night, hearing every little creak. It's uncomfortable. I thought I was just being paranoid. Then my girlfriend said she felt the same way when her husband travels. Until they had what she calls their Vivint talk. Vivint, my friend calls it the best home security system out there. It's super easy to use and fit right into our budget. And I love my video cameras. I can see what's going on in and around my home right from my computer or smartphone. It's actually kind of funny. I told my husband, if you're going to be traveling or working late, I'm getting Vivint. And it's made all the difference.
Call now. Not only is installation free, you'll get up to $1,500 worth of Vivint security cameras and equipment today at no charge. Seriously, $1,500. Just pay as little as $99 for activation. Call 877-776-3430. 877-776-3430. 877-776-3430. Restrictions apply. 48 or 60-month agreement and minimum $49.99 per month required. Not available in Louisiana. See Vivint.com for license numbers.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to my show. It's Friday again, and I'm your host, Diana Bellarosa, award-winning author and best-selling author of Fire and Ice, The Journey and Transformation, Ashes and Ice, The Saga, and The White Within, available for sale on Amazon. As always, if you have questions, the phone number to call is 1-347-324-3714. Have your questions ready and talk to us. We'll be very happy to answer all of your questions, and we are going to have a friendly conversation. Last time we had Rebecca Francel. We talked about her book, Shattered Prism, available to purchase on Amazon. And today we have a new guest all the way from England. Her name is B.A. Goodjohn. And today we are going to discuss her poetry book, Bone Song. And she's here today to tell us all about herself and her new book. So, hi, B.A. Goodjohn. How are you today?
Hi, Diana. I'm very well. Thank you for having me on the show today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being on my show. So, tell us about yourself and Bone Song.
Yeah. Gosh, to tell you about myself, where to start? Well, I'm British, as you may be able to tell from my accent. I've been living in America since about 99, so I've been here in America for about 15 years. And I guess if I was to sum up my experience with writing in a few sentences, it would be that I didn't actually start writing until I was about 40. And that was when I came to America, and I couldn't get a job because I didn't have the right visa paperwork. So I took the decision to go back to college. And while I was at college, I discovered a huge love of writing. So I attended a small liberal arts college in Virginia. At that point, it was called Randolph-Macon Women's College, and I graduated in creative writing. Went off and did my master's because I was still so in love, not just with writing, but also with studying and being in college as a mature student. Got my master's, and then I came back to teach at Randolph. So I've kind of come full circle. So when I was a student here at Randolph in my 40s, and that was between 2000 and 2004, I was actually writing fiction. So my first book, which I began as an undergraduate, was a novel, and that was published back in 2007. But when I did my master's, I rediscovered a love of poetry. So I kind of jumped off of the fiction ship and, roped myself to the mast of poetry. And it was probably this poetry collection has been a lifetime of writing. But around about 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago, I worked out that I probably had about 50 poems that I really liked enough to put my name on them. And at that point, I had enough for a collection. So what happened was I started to send out the collection to some competitions that were being run by small presses and independent publishers in the Virginia area. And eventually, Longwood University, who were running a prize called the Rector First Poetry Book Prize, picked my manuscript as a winner. And it's going to be published through Briery Creek Press, which is a very small independent press that's attached to Longwood University. So I'm kind of very excited now. It's been 7 years since I last had a book published, which was the Sticklebacks novel. And it's going to be so lovely to see a collection of poetry out. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, they're amazing poems, actually. I was able to read some of them. They're just so heart-touching. There is a lot of emotions. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I love it. You're welcome. So, what are your future plans with this poem book? Are you going to have more poems? Are you going to write more poems, or are you going to work on other books?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I have a novel that's due out in November of this year, so 2015 is a great year for me in terms of publishing. Not only do I have the poetry collection out in the spring, but then I have this other novel coming out in November. So I have to try and work out what is it that I want to do. Do I want to spend the next kind of shot of energy, creative energy that I have on maybe a third novel, or do I want to stay with poetry? And I think I'm probably going to be staying with poetry. I teach full-time at RandolphCollege, and that means that really I only have the summer in which to write. And really the summer's not long enough to, for me anyway, now that I'm in my 50s, it's not long enough for me to really complete a long fiction project. Poetry seems to fit into my writing schedule a lot more easily. Although, having said that, of course, I was driving home from work a few days ago and began to have some thoughts about maybe a third novel that I might like to start to look at over the summer. So who knows? I guess I will write what needs to be written next. That tends to be what happens for me.
Do you see writing as a career?
You know it what? Well, I mean it. Gosh, that's an interesting question. It's my career now, but it's very, very hard to make a living as a writer. I think it's practically impossible to make a living as a poet. I think fiction writers have a hard enough job to pay the bills on the back of novels. So what happened for me was I actually discovered a love for teaching. I had never taught in my life. I have kind of a checkered past in some ways. I left school just before my 16th birthday in England. I'm the youngest daughter. My family is a working class family from London, and really at that point there was never any expectation that I would do anything other than get through high school and then get married and have children and I don't know, have some little pin money job somewhere. But because I emigrated to America, I think that at this point I found out that whilst I loved poetry, I really needed something that I could do to pay the bills. And for me, that's turned out to be teaching, as well as discovering a love for writing. I've actually discovered a love for teaching. I'm not so sure I would be very well matched to teach children, but there's something about working with young adults who are right on that cusp of coming out of high school, but they haven't quite decided what it is that they're good at yet. I really find that transition time between high school and the real world interesting. And so I teach creative writing now. So I guess I'm in a win-win situation. You know, I get to do what I love, which is to write poetry in the summer and fiction, and then in the rest of the year I get to teach poetry and fiction and creative nonfiction to young people, and most of them want to learn, so that's always a good thing.
How the life of an author looks like in England compared to here in United States? Is it much easier to make a living from writing in England, or is it easier here in United States?
I have to say, and obviously what I say now is just based on my experience, that I think it's possibly easier to become relatively known as a writer in America. And I think that's down to the American college culture. In England, I think it's changing a little bit, but not that much. In England, not such a high percentage of young people go on to college. Many people are coming straight out of high school and trying to get a job. And the good thing about colleges is that they champion writing. So an awful lot of the universities in America have small presses attached to them. And those small presses are the lifeblood for the new writer. It's really hard nowadays to get a publishing contract with one of the big independent presses if you don't have any publishing credits to your name. So in America, there are an awful lot of venues to send your work. Whereas in England, I think, again, I can't be quoted on this, but my sense is that many more of the small journals and literary magazines are privately owned, independently owned, as opposed to being attached to some kind of institute of learning. I'm also not so sure that as many people are writing in England. The whole idea of creative writing as a discipline, as something that one might study at university, I think seems to be an American idea rather than a British idea. I know that when I go home to see my mum and dad, who still live in London, they and a lot of their friends are kind of stunned that one could actually study poetry, the writing of poetry. I think they're really happy with the idea that you might go to university to study Shakespeare or Coleridge or even some of the more modern poets, but to actually go to college to write your own poetry is something that I think is still seen as being a bit strange. I know there aren't quite as many PhD programs in Britain for creative writers, but I think that if I had to choose where to become a writer, I think I'd choose America each time.
I think we have a caller. I'm sorry, I have somebody online. Let me see.
Great.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Who's this?
Hello.
Can you hear us? Hi.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. This is Brent Robinson. How you doing?
Fine. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm in the United States, in Tennessee, and I want to ask Bunny a question.
Yes,
certainly.
Of course. Go ahead.
What, I don't know how to really word this, but what do you like writing more, poetry or novels? And is it difficult being so open with your personal problems or struggles in your poetry? As a poet myself, I'm very interested in what your take is.
Yeah, it's a really great question. Did you say your name was Wayne?
No, ma'am. Brent, B-R-E-N-T.
Brent. Right,
I'm
Brent.
from the South. I'm in Tennessee.
Cool. Okay, I think I can answer that question because it's a really interesting one. I think that in fiction, it's much easier to hold up a shield between yourself and the reader. The reader is never really sure whether what they're reading is based on the author's real life or whether they've absolutely grabbed it from their imagination. But in poetry, I think that our poetry comes more from our heart than our heads.
Right.
At least it does for me. I don't know whether it's the same for you, but when I'm writing